Daddy. What are you doing?
I'm just doing a podcast.
What's that?
Regular dads sharing our experiences in the chaotic world of dad life. Welcome to Dads on Duty.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Today I'm thrilled to welcome to the podcast Wade Hurst. Wade is the founder and driving force behind Informed Mental Health and is an experienced presenter of mental health first aid, as well as working with workplaces, schools, and sporting teams. With a passion for demystifying mental health and a knack for translating complex information into practical advice, Wade is here to share his insights and experiences with us. Whether you're seeking to understand mental health better or looking for practical ways to enhance your own well-being, Wade's expertise is sure to offer something valuable. As always, we tie this back into life as a parent, so hopefully you're able to take something away from this chat. See the links in the show notes if you want to learn more about Wade and informed mental health. But without further ado, let's dive into our conversation with Wade from Informed Mental Health.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Dads on Duty podcast. I'm super excited to have a special guest in the studio, Wade Hurst. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here. Nice to come along. Good to catch up again and have a chat.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've got some in-depth topics to cover today, I would say, but off the top, lighter subject. Wade Hurst, calling you by your name feels very weird.
It does.
I know you from playing footy, and we can get this out if it's not, suitable for podcasts, but I know you affectionately as Moisty. Now, I presume Wade Hurst, thirsty, Moisty, something like that. Is there a backstory? Are you willing to share? What's the go there?
A little bit. It's all sort of connected in. Yeah. So the main one probably for the PG version is very superstitious cricket football. So I went for a very long period of time where I would leave all of my either cricket whites, socks, footy gear until the night before I then played the next game. So generally there were times I would rock up to footy, and if it had been raining and couldn't dry my gear, it would all be wet and soggy and moist, and the whole Hursty, moisty thing just seemed to click in pretty quickly. Yeah, so sort of stuck from there. It was mainly my mates that I sort of grew up with and played footy with when I was younger that we sort of got to that age of, 17, 18 and hanging out and all those types of things, and it became something, and then sort of became a thing where, for those close mates, I'd sort of, tell them that, I hadn't washed my gear from the week before, my socks were all still wet and sweaty, and rub it in their face and all that type of thing. So that was pretty popular with them. But yeah, that sort of stuck, and moving around different sort of footy clubs, you pick up some different nicknames, and then someone will come and watch a game and tell everyone that, that's not actually my nickname. This is what it actually is, and go from there.
Yeah.
So that sort of stuck a little bit from there moving forward. So, yeah, that's probably the best version we can discuss of that on the podcast.
It's a unique nickname, and I don't want to ruin any credibility you have early doors.
That's right.
But it does feel very weird. Wade, that's not you. That's someone else. To me,
yeah,
anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember played footy with a guy for about 6 or 7 years, I think it was. And then, I think we were playing through a final series or something, and they were announcing names, and it was like, oh, Wade Hurst. And then he sort of stood next to me. He's like, they've got the wrong team. Like, are they reading the right team out? And he just didn't actually know what my first name was after all those years, because the nickname just, sticks so solid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you actually gave me a nickname when I came down to play footy, which I'd never had before. Sando, which does make sense because my last name is Sanders.
Obviously.
But now all my mates call me Sando. So
really?
that stuck.
Nice.
And then when I became a dad, it became Dando for Dad Sando.
Well, there you go.
So you've kind of provided me with an ongoing nickname there as well.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. Well, Sando's so obvious. Like
it does. Yeah.
You can't go by Brian. Brian was weird saying Brian.
I don't like it either.
No, so everyone was like, "Hey, you going Brian?" And you can't yell out Brian on a footy field.
No. So,
I
hate introducing myself as Brian.
Yeah.
Fair play to my family, whatever. But it is what it is. Yeah. Context as of kind of two. We played footy. I'd never played before. You're a gun. I rocked up fairly intimidated. You were captain coach. I was terrible, but you made me feel welcome. Had one of the best years of sport of my life. We no longer play together. We both, we've both pretty much gone on to bigger and better things, I would say. But you were also doing different things professionally then and to what you're doing now. So can you give us a bit of a backstory of, pre-COVID, what you're doing, that transition to what you're doing now?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. No, it was great to have you down. I remember that first year. It was a bit of a thing of going, we might be able to get a side together here, and how do we go about doing that? And obviously, knowing Hardy and a few other people, and then it was, well, if you've got a couple of mates that want to come down and have a kick, or have had a kick before, then do it. But yeah, one of those, years where we, might not have won too many games, and it was a bit of a slog from times, but really enjoyable atmosphere, and sort of kicked off going through to, last year essentially, parts of that side sticking together and winning a premiership last year. So the old adage, got to start somewhere. So that was really good. Yeah, my story, really interesting one. Hopefully this doesn't take up the next 40 minutes of the podcast. But yeah, pre-COVID, and certainly if you had have asked me, years ago, would I be here where I am now doing what I do now? No way, even if you had have asked me that 5 or 6 years ago. Mainly though, the bulk of my work was, I started out in sport and recreation at University of Queensland. Started running all their social competitions out there, worked my way through program development into sport and rec manager there. Went and managed a new facility out at their Gatton campus for 2 years. That was a new pool, gym out there, and unfortunately got made redundant from that role. It was, times are getting tough, so most of the venue managers at UQ Sport then got made redundant. I moved into student accommodation from that, more that pastoral care perspective, looking after young people. Certainly had gone through, umpteen amount of leadership courses and those types of things, and quite enjoyed, managing people, whether it even be through the coaching side of things and through sport. So it seemed a good fit to, go and provide some assistance and help to, some of our young people. So I was in student accommodation for, I think it was about 10 or 12 years, and I ended up at a private student accommodation provider, Unilodge in Brisbane at Wollongabba there, and was in that when COVID sort of arrived. So being at a private provider, we had, probably 60 to 70% were international students. So when this thing arrived on our shores, it was hopefully this thing lasts for 3 or 4 weeks and we'll all be back to normal. And then once we had the realisation that that might not be the case, we, drastically lost numbers of residents and going overseas. So it was only there a few more weeks, and then unfortunately myself and the marketing manager got made redundant from that role. So you could imagine in April when COVID arrived, not a great time to be out looking for a job. Everyone was either being stood down from their current role or made redundant at various places where they were. Luckily enough, a good mate of mine, Ian Edwards, was working at Flight Centre at that point, and his partner as well. And they had all been stood down, and I managed to call him, I think it was like on the Tuesday, and say, oh, well, you're not alone in that anymore, just been made redundant yesterday, so what are you going to do? And he had said that the owner of Flight Centre had given up 4 stories of their building in South Bank so that Centrelink or Services Australia could open a new call centre, because they were about to announce that you could get access to funding, and for people that have never used Services Australia before, all of a sudden became, well, how do I get access to this money? So government said, let's open a call centre of 850 people. And Ian had told me that and said, look, if you go and put this application in, basically Flight Centre staff have got first dibs, and then it's sort of Qantas staff and pilots and Virgin staff. Put this little code in and you pretty much guarantee you're getting a job. And that was sort of, on my own then with the 2 boys, and it was like, I've got to take some form of work, like being made redundant. I'd only been at Unilodge for a couple of years, so no redundancy payout, anything like that. Everything's starting to get shut down, no jobs going. So took that really interesting experience. Again, for people that had never used that service, having to ring and, people going, MyGov, like what's MyGov? And then, government in all their wisdom, the website is my.gov.au. So initially telling people that, they're like, that sounds a bit of a scam, actually. Why wouldn't it be mygov.com.au or mygov.au? So there's a couple of interesting phone calls and trying to, get people's information and confirm the person was who they were. Even saying, okay, well, I need you to tell me your full name, date of birth, address, other particular details. And they're like, hang on, I've called you and you've got all that info. So why are you asking me for all that? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, I've got to confirm your identity before I can give you information.
Yeah.
And they're like, but if you've got all of that info, why am I telling you? And people would just hang up and go, okay, well, I think this is a scam.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you've called through to the number
proper
on the
number.
government website.
Yes.
So we're legit, we're real. But, people were worried around those times as well with scams
Yeah.
and all those things happening.
Absolutely.
In that contract for 9 months, I picked up a general manager role at River Life in Brisbane. They do events and activities on the Brisbane River. Again, came to a point of, a few lockdowns in Brisbane across a couple of weekends, loss of a reasonable amount of revenue for sort of a small business. So again, made redundant through that role. So again, that was sort of, a few redundancies in a short period of time during COVID when there weren't a lot of jobs going. Luckily, probably just stayed positive and thought something will come up or we'll do something. And in that time in student accommodation, I'd get my emergency overnight staff trained in mental health first aid so that they could, respond to particular incidents, have greater knowledge of that. And the last 2 times we had facilitators come and do that, didn't do such a great job. And I remember way back then saying, it's got to be a better way of doing that. Maybe one day, that'd be something I'd really like to do and enjoy that. So after that sort of third redundancy or third job in 15 months, I sort of thought, I've got a reasonable amount of experience from working in student accommodation around, young people's mental health, and had been exposed to, many things, including, some fairly, critical incidents, traumatic events, those types of things as well. So sort of gave me the opportunity then to the facilitator qualification course was in 5 months' time from when I had that redundancy. So I was like, I reckon I might as well just book in, pay for it, and then go out and do this. For me, it was a bit of a sign to go, hang on, any job you go to or anything may not ever be stable.
Yes.
So if you can get some work and try and do that yourself, and knowing the importance and how beneficial it is for people who complete the course. Yeah, decided to do that. Had a couple of job offers in the meantime to say, come and work for us. We know you might only be here for 5 months, but, that'll be enough. And some of those were setting up new student accommodations. And I sort of thought to myself, I don't want to go for 5 months. They open the doors, I leave, the next person comes in and says, I don't agree with any of that stuff and I'll do it totally different. Yeah. So randomly, Seek email came through, job availability at Bunnings at Acacia Ridge, and I was like, how bad could that be? If I went and worked casually at Bunnings for a few days a week, how would that be? And then I applied there, didn't get an interview there, but another store at Newstead in Brisbane picked up that application, sort of rang and said, what was your interview feedback at Acacia Ridge? And I said, I didn't actually even get an interview. To which later on we, found out through ringing and saying, was there any particular reason? And they were like, you've got all these high-level management qualifications and you've managed people and you haven't worked in any of these industries before, so we weren't sure if it was sort of real or legit or not. So the wonderful people at Newstead were like, that's crazy, so we want you to come for the interview, but we'll pretty much talk about, working here and what happens. So, so I started doing that till I got my, accreditation to facilitate, and, been in that, doing that ever since. So, which is really rewarding work, even, finishing a course yesterday in Port Macquarie with an organisation I've been working with for the last 12 months. That was their 23rd group of staff that I've trained in that. Yeah, and, great organisation to work for, have a real, importance placed on, their people supporting people around them. And, it was really good to work with, and just so rewarding when people finish it and go, what, I probably didn't do the greatest previously, but now I'm really confident that I'll be able to see something in someone earlier, ask them the question, if they need help, I can guide them in the right direction. Yeah. Whereas we know sometimes we leave people to get really, really unwell mentally, and then we step in and say, hey, this has gotten really bad that you can't go to work anymore and get out of bed. Yeah. And think we step in at that point, but it's more those times when, people start disengaging in what they normally do. They might seem a little bit more tired than usual. They're coming to work later than usual, like all those little signs that at that point we can go, hey, I've just noticed a couple of these little things. Is everything all right? Or do you want to have a chat about things? And then that allows people to go, I might have X, Y, Z going on. I've got some unusual thoughts, feelings about life and myself. Okay, well, we can direct you somewhere to have a chat about that. Yeah. So, yes, it's been really rewarding doing that work.
Sounds like a serious journey. You
Yeah,
mentioned
sorry if that took forever
No.
to go through that.
no, that's great.
It's long-winded.
It's a good background.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned through all those when you were losing your job, what was it, 3 times, you just stayed positive. Like, is it as simple as that? Like, what were the emotions? How was your mental health? And what did you do to get through when you found out?
Yeah, and even talking in this space, I always say to people, I think some people are luckier than some other people that, they have the ability to work through some of those things a little better than other people might be able to. I just think I'm really lucky that, whether it be through, all some life experiences and things like that to go, what's the very worst that could happen? And for me, that was like, I'm sure my parents would probably let me move back into their place with the 2 boys if I couldn't afford to pay rent anywhere or have a house or something. So while I was able to pay rent, have a little bit of money in the bank, still be able to sort of get through. And it's just one of those things of, I'm sort of a reasonable believer in, some people think it's wishy-washy, but, manifesting what you think will happen moving forward. And I was always like, I've got enough connections in everywhere I've worked that someone will say, oh, if you're looking for work, maybe I'll give you 2 days a week. Yep, no worries if that pays the rent. And, I'll use some of the money I've saved to get groceries, then awesome. Yep. And essentially that happened after the from moving from the UQ redundancy into sort of sport and student accommodation where, I'd had that redundancy out at UQ and then a manager of the sporting facilities at Griffith Uni in Brisbane who I'd, while I was at UQ, had been to numerous uni games with. He managed the Griffith teams all the time and everything like that. And, he had someone that had left a role in just working in the gym at the Logan campus, and he said, we're open 3 days a week, but if you want to go and sit down there, he's like, probably about 5 or 6 people a day come through, but it'll be boring as anything and not much happens down there. But I was like, yep, sweet, no worries, that sounds good. And then one of his other staff went on maternity leave in the student council area and clubs and societies and said, do you want to step into that for 6 months full time? I was like, yep, sounds good, no worries. Been at unis, know the system, everything. Yeah. And then she went on extended leave, so stayed in that, and then she actually moved into a different role. And that was when he was doing one of the head of college roles at student accommodation. And again, another person left there, and he said, do you want to give that a go? And it was like, yep, might as well. And so always thinking that, and then particularly, the Uni Lodge redundancy, which was sort of in that peak COVID time. Obviously, it's pretty stressful that you go, there's not all those jobs that were available 3 months ago simply aren't now because nothing's open. People aren't allowed out. Yeah. There's COVID things happening. But again, I think I was like, something will come up. If I sit here stressed and worry and go, I'm done, what am I going to do with myself? Where's the money going to come from to pay for things? I think you sort of stress yourself into that sometimes. Yeah. But again, I honestly think that, some people are just, they're able, or their brains allow them to be more positive and think that way sometimes. And, I use that physical analogy through mental health first aid too, to say, it's a really good explanation to people who, sort of can't really grapple with the concept of, what mental health is and why it is. And I say, I'm a chronic asthmatic, so my lungs just don't function how they're supposed to. I need medication to make sure they're okay, and I need to exercise when I'm supposed to. Don't overdo it, and I can stay reasonably healthy. Some people, for them, their organ that doesn't work in their body is their brain. It doesn't function how it's supposed to. Some people need medication for that. Some people need to do the things to keep themselves healthy. And we may not know that a person, lives with that mental illness because they're healthy for bouts. But as much as if I, went for a 10K run in -2-degree temperatures in the air, started to close my lungs up and I didn't take my medication, then I'll probably become unwell pretty quickly. Yep. And the same can happen for people not looking after themselves, with their mental health. You can become unwell pretty quickly. Yeah. So my lungs don't function as well as yours might, and you're probably pretty lucky that you're in that situation and you're better off than I am in that situation. And I feel the same with, people's mental health and how that works for them. Yeah.
It's an awesome analogy. And I think one of the areas we're in at the moment is, in the mental health space, a lot of people don't completely understand or grasp, which is why what you're doing is so great. Yeah. I just want to touch on the value though of what you're saying about, being positive, and you went through all this shit, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
But you just keep pushing on.
Yeah.
But like you talk about how some people think it's wishy-washy or believe in like the manifestation, but
Yeah.
like the proof's in the pudding with you in some regards, because
Yeah.
you just said yes, you just kept moving forwards, and eventually the puzzle kind of came together and
Yeah.
with a positive outcome. And
Yeah.
I don't know, you can talk to this, but just putting one foot in front of the other and trying to go in that direction,
Yeah.
you may not get there tomorrow or immediately, but eventually you will,
Yeah.
instead of just, as you say, just sitting there in the negative emotions
Yeah.
where perhaps you're not getting anywhere.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's drawing on some of those, previous positive experiences to go, well, you can't focus on those negative ones to go, I don't have a job, I'm not going to get a job. What will I do? But for me, it was, okay, anytime anything's happened or come up, I've known enough people to be able to jump into something else. So based on all of my previous experiences, that should be something I see might flow through moving forward. And seem to sort of be that thinking, and I think it's that positivity or that, manifesting to go, okay, well, this is where I might want to be in a few years' time. And even, with going and doing this type of work, having enough people around me, because it's fairly daunting, to sit down towards what we thought was the end of COVID and say, okay, I'm going to work casually somewhere for a couple of days a week for the next 5 months until I go out and do this course and start my own business, and just hope that there's the business out there and that people want to go and do mental health first aid. And again, lucky to have supportive, encouraging people around me to go, this is a real passion of yours. If you put everything into it, you'll make it work.
Yeah.
If you sit back and go, I hope it all comes to me and everything happens for me, probably won't.
Yes.
So based on all those, and that's why I sort of, when people get in those phases, sometimes I sort of encourage people to go, okay, well, let's focus on those positive things that might have happened at some point, put all our energy into thinking about those and thinking about how that might transpire moving forward into the future. And that might work for you. And in most cases, it seems to. Yeah. Same with, footy injuries and stuff like that, where, I've had a couple of bad ones in the last sort of few years. And at my age, people are like, surely that's it. You're done. Surely you don't want another injury and this and that. And I sort of draw back to going, well, that's sort of my thing. Without that, I'm not sure, I can move into coaching and do all those types of things. But while I still feel fit and active, there's physios in the world who say, here's your plan. If you follow your plan, it's pretty well proven that you'll get back from that and you'll continue to play.
Yeah.
And that then becomes your focus, not my knee's busted. Will I ever run again? If I do play, is it gonna go on me again? There's professionals out there who say, if you follow this plan, then our research and through millions of experiences, it shows that you'll be back to health and you'll be able to keep going.
Yep. Absolutely.
So sort of that view of things. Yeah.
Do you have any stories from people you've taught, or people who've come back to you that have, been really thankful and had any situations where they're like, if you didn't provide me with this information, I, wouldn't have had the skills or been able to cope or provide people with this first aid. Is there anything that you're able to share or anything, that might be cool to hear?
Yeah, absolutely. And it happens, it's happened so often during the 2 days of the course, or if you choose to do the blended online version, and I now at the start of the first day, I now actively forewarn people to say, okay, either in the next couple of hours or across the next 2 days, it's really all of a sudden going to dawn on you that someone in your life might be going through something, which can sometimes be confronting to go, geez, when I thought that person was having a bad couple of months, I know now they might be really unwell, but then learn what they do next. And you have heaps of realizations. I remember clearly a guy before Christmas last year in one of the courses. He was an older gentleman. We're talking about, panic attacks and going through. That's a mental health crisis situation that we can assist someone with that might be going through that. And I remember we went through that part of it, talked about it all, talked to the signs, symptoms, how we can help people out. And we just got to the end of it and he went, you know what? My wife was having panic attacks when we were overseas. I just kept telling her, get over yourself. Come on, we got to get moving. We got to do this and that. And he was like, what I should have said was, what can I do for you right now? What's the best thing I can do to help you? Yep. And it sort of dawned on him to go, they were traveling overseas, and every time they'd stay a few days in a place and then they had to pack up and leave, she'd have a panic attack and, have physical, trembling, crying, hysterical, couldn't move, sitting on the end of the bed. And he was like, stop doing this silly thing you're doing. What are you doing? We just need to get moving every time. But it was just that starting that thought process of, okay, we've got to pack up. We've got to be out by 9 or 10 o'clock. We've then got to get all our bags. We've got to move to the next train station or the bus station. We've got to get on that form of transport. We've got to go to the next country or town. And that was just so overwhelming for her. And for him, who had never been through something like that, was sort of just, what are you doing? You're going crazy. This is silly. So yeah, there's heaps of moments like that where, people just have those realizations, and more around, when I remember saying it yesterday during the course yesterday. I always go, sorry to keep using, a physical analogy to it, but for some people that's the easiest way they can sort of understand that. And you really see people have those light bulb moments of going, you know what, for anxiety, I just thought the person doesn't go out and do the shopping because they just tell themselves they can't leave the house.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's they will feel sick in the stomach, like they're going to throw up. That's not something that in their brain they go, it'd be a cool idea. I reckon we should feel like we want to throw up.
Yeah.
That's my choice. I can change that. It's not at all.
Yeah.
Sitting frozen, not being able to move isn't a choice that person has. It's just the brain's way of trying to cope with that fear or worry or those thoughts. So yeah, you definitely have those moments of real understanding and clarification. And, I always say in workplaces, that this side of things, or the mental health first aid training, can sometimes come behind, the leadership training, the personality profiling, the sales course, the development courses. And then we go, okay, well, maybe mental health first aid then will be one we can sort of shuffle in after all of those. And, when I have initial meetings with organisations and some HR and people and culture people to say, well, how good a leader is your person going to be if they're unwell or if they can't support the people around them? And when I say to them, our stats in the most recent survey is that 1 in 5 people will suffer a mental illness in the last year, but a lifetime prevalence then goes to 43%.
Right.
So we're talking 2 in 5 people around us will have at some point in their life suffered some form of, diagnosable mental illness. Not a bad time, but actually a diagnosable mental illness. And then I say to them, so that's 2 in 5 of your teams. And then I say, our stats also show only 1 in 2 people will actually go and seek help.
Yeah.
So in effect, if you multiply that out, you've got 4 out of 5 people in your team that have been through something in their lifetime. So you might have someone who's a really good leader and show really good leadership qualities, but how are they going about caring for those 4 other people in their team? And if you sort of start with that, making sure everyone's healthy and well, that might be a good starting point to then, develop on that. Yeah. And that's it sort of starts to then move up from 5 or 6 on the list to going, and it's now a, workplace health and safety thing where psychosocial risk is, another, enlightening thing for people to say, as much as we tape down the cords on the floor in a conference room so no one trips over, we need to make sure we're not overworking people and that people don't have job creep or harassment, discrimination, bullying, because if someone trips over the cord you haven't taped down, they put in a workplace health and safety claim. If someone's overworked and doing more than what their job description says, they can now put in a workplace health and safety claim. Right. So it's that thing to go, so what risk mitigation strategies do you have in place for psychosocial risks? And some places are like, we've got a bullying discrimination policy. Yep. Okay, cool. How regularly do you assess people's job descriptions? Is there meetings about job creep and people working too much? We'll look into that. And it's like, okay, well, if you're working in a warehouse, would you just look into having a policy around wearing harnesses on scissor lifts or hard hats if things are going to fall on people's heads? Oh, no, that's a health and safety risk. That's got to be looked after. And it's like, okay, well, they're now in the same boat. So, yeah. So it has that element of, risk mitigation as well.
Well, I kind of, and this is, morbid and everything, but if there's a workplace physical injury and someone, passes away, that's significant.
Yeah.
But there's as high a risk or, whatever the percentages are of someone struggling with their mental health and committing suicide.
Yep. Yep.
And in my mind, just listening to you talk now, the two aren't too different.
No. No.
Um,
Yep. And it does become a risk for people, and just people becoming unwell and taking time off. And we know the longer a person has time off work for a mental health condition, the less likely they are to even return to that workplace.
Yeah.
So again, it's sort of, and I always say to people in the course, this is all about catching people as they start to fall, as opposed to the person's now on workplace health and safety leave because they've become so unwell. There's probably 7 or 8 signs in that process that if you had qualified mental health first aiders in your workplace, probably would have seen or picked up on.
Yep.
Without that, and people who don't know, it's similar to the Are You OK Day conversation. I'm lucky enough to do a bit of work with Are You OK Day as well, and for the ones that do the yellow cupcakes and yellow balloons and put the one slide up that says "Ask Are You OK." I've certainly been to events before where I'll pick some unsuspecting person and say, "Okay, well, if you were to ask me if I was okay," and I said, my marriage is breaking down, I can't connect with my kids anymore, can't play footy because my back's no good anymore, really unmotivated every morning to go to work, what would you say next to me, or what would you do? Yeah. For some people, it's like that sounds bad. I hope it gets better for you, mate.
Yeah.
As opposed to, okay, well, can we unpack that? Tell me more about it. When is it at its worst? Have you considered going and speaking to someone about it? This is quite a common thing that you might be going through. Let's contact our EAP at work, which might give you a free chat with a counsellor anytime you want. Those types of things is where, as accredited mental health first aiders, you learn all of that to then know that's how you respond to people to get some help. Yeah.
And I think that's super important because I know it could be very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And even just the perception around it, obviously different age groups of people in life and stages and where they're at. I play cricket with a lot of young blokes in their late teens and, it's Are You OK Day, and they rock up and big pat on the back as a joke. Oh, you okay, mate?
Yeah.
And it's well, if they're not, they're certainly not going to tell you about it in that situation.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's
Exactly.
not, I don't know, perhaps it's not the greatest expectation to, expect a 17-year-old bloke to be able to deal with that situation.
Yeah.
But as it becomes more prevalent in society and, you're teaching parents and then they're potentially doing it with their kids and then starting that kind of generational process.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And some of that comes back to just knowledge and awareness too. For some of those people, it's, what's their, connection with their fathers, and what would their grandfather have said, however many years ago, with if someone was going through something tough,
That's right.
come around for a few beers or chin up. It gets better. You'll be right. We're the men of the family.
Cup of cement.
Yeah, we got a teaspoon of cement. We got to be the ones that are tough and strong and rigid. Yeah. And we know a lot of people, older generations have suffered a lot with that, and haven't got the appropriate help that we now know they probably needed. Yeah.
I really like the physical analogy. I'm a physio, so that's the way my brain thinks.
Yeah.
But just that kind of, and I guess this is a completely different, train of thought, which we don't have to go down.
Yeah.
But the medical system generally is fixing; it's not preventative.
Yeah.
And that's for physical conditions we can see that are obvious.
Yeah.
Let alone ones like mental issues that we can't.
Yeah.
In you've got some workplace health and safety, processes that try and prevent the physical injuries.
Yeah.
But we don't prevent things generally as a whole.
Yeah.
We're always looking at fixing.
Yeah.
So it's not just the mental health.
Yeah.
The whole medical system, I feel, has to improve in that regard.
Yeah. And that becomes an awareness piece again for people to know that if you're regularly exercising, regularly engaging in community activities, you're regularly playing cricket, playing footy with your mates, going to coffee with your girlfriends, your best friends, all those types of stuff, that we just see those as mechanics of what we do, and we don't tie that back to saying, okay, well, if we're fairly well and healthy mentally, that we don't always tie it back to those things are key important things.
Yeah.
And for people, they're what fall by the wayside when they become unwell or when they're unwell. Yeah. And I know we spoke briefly about it when we caught up that, the current research around, loneliness in middle-aged men comes from some of that of, always being around people, training 2 or 3 nights a week, catching up socially, playing sport on the weekend. And we either have children and young children, and all those stresses come in of, well, we need a bit more money now, and, I've got to work a little bit more, and then there's time raising our children, and then there's time doing other things, both parents working, that some of that falls by the wayside. And that's really now presenting in that data, particularly for, 35 to 49-year-old males who are classed as the loneliest people in our society.
Yeah.
Who feel that loneliness isn't just not having friends or being on your own. It's not having any form of, meaningful connection with people. And we traditionally probably think that's, 60, 70 plus males, because we hear about, men's sheds and keeping in contact with people and, grey nomads and travelling and those things.
Yeah.
But, our stats show that, it was 43% of males 35 to 49 said they felt some form of loneliness. And for 16%, that was severe loneliness and no connection with people. So we sort of miss that link sometimes of all the things we do that we think, our fun, enjoyable activities are just that, but it's so linked back to, our mental well-being and how healthy we are or aren't.
Yeah. Well, because I went through this, like cricket and footy and sports and everything up until I was, 25, then went with my partner and did a bit of traveling, came back, bought a house, started a family. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, you're going to work, you're coming home, stress, pressure, cost of living. You're like, I need to make more money. And I was always the person, I was like, I want to be there for my kids. I don't want to be like, a prisoner to my job, this kind of thing. But then you're like, well, I can't. Like, I have to work. Yeah. I have to do all these things. And I feel like a lot of people in the current climate, cost of living, it'd be like, it's a luxury to be able to spend time and do things that look after your mental health. Yeah. But it's like, I imagine it's the priority. Like, is there a solution? Is it just like being aware of this and trying to? Yeah,
it's probably more so just knowing what those things are. Again, it comes back to an understanding of that, and it could be from the exercise perspective. It could be that we know that we only need to exercise 3 times a week for 30 minutes of moderate to vigorous exercise to reduce our risk of developing, mental illness. So even, if we think about where could you pull 30 minutes from your day? For some people, that's set the alarm 30 minutes earlier. If the kids are getting up at 5 as it is, then set your alarm for 4:30, do that half an hour walk, and then it's done and banked, and it will make you feel better. You still got the rest of the time to do all of those things. Yeah. And again, it's those experiences like you had. You might have come back from overseas and got a partner, thinking about buying a house, having kids, and some of them are still popping off to the Vic or wherever on a Friday and Saturday night after cricket, and you go, hang on, that's not in my realm of really important things anymore. At 19 and 20, it was high on the list, but now it's not really. So that creates that gap then. Even with that group of close people close to you,
it's so hard. Like it took me my daughter's 2.5, and I reckon it's taken me 2 years to be completely okay that I'm at a different life stage than I was 2 years ago. Yeah, like I can't travel, and I reckon whether it was my identity or what, like I wasn't able to completely just relinquish that and go, that's not where I'm at the moment. Yeah. I need to focus my complete energy into this. Yeah. And whether it's just time or what, but it was really tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm similar to you. I happily and openly admit to people that, all of my close friends or friendships generally now on reflection are very seasonal. All my really close friends at high school, all of our really close family friends growing up and playing footy with them, but I kept playing footy, most of them didn't. They had kids much younger than I did, so there was that miss of, hey, I'm going to footy. I'm at the footy club from 9:30 on a Saturday morning till 9:30 that night. You guys are at home raising 3 and 1 year olds, and so it starts to create that gap. And then whether it's playing cricket or playing footy and sort of going in and out of those seasonal friendship sort of groups where I would probably have if I was going through a really tough time and something really bad was happening, I'd probably have confidently say there'd be 4 or 5 people who would be happy to answer the phone and have a chat to me all the time, but there might be periods where I don't speak to those people on the phone for 9 or 12 months. Yeah. So I know they're there, but we're not going every fortnight catching up for a coffee or, going to the beach or doing those types of things. So I've certainly felt the same thing, and it can definitely happen that way. And and go down that path. Yeah, for sure.
When it comes to like sport or like when you talk about a lot of these things, I just think of like having a purpose.
Yeah.
Like having something, and that's not your job or your kids
Yeah.
that you have to do that gives you a reason to wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, like, for a lot of people, it's sport.
Yeah.
But a lot of blokes, I feel, would feel guilty about taking the time to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of it probably comes down to having supportive partners and that are aware as well. And I know for me, like, you know, I'd want my partner to be taking the same time for her mental health.
Yeah.
But do you have any thoughts on how you do combat that guilt situations?
Again, it just comes down to that level of understanding to go, okay, well, if you're not picking up and doing some of those really key things, you know, your health is going to suffer, which means you then impart some of that on the people around you. So, you know, it can add stress to relationships, stress to people around you. You know, you can be a little bit tighter than what you normally are. You know, we start to get a little crankier, a little easier. You know, we don't want to be cranky at our kids. So we sort of go, well, what's going to happen if we don't do it versus what happens if we do it? And again, it's about, making that time and understanding the importance of it. It's very similar to, again, a physical health thing of we want to eat and drink really nice things, but we know we've got to expend some of that energy and go for a walk or go and exercise. If we don't, we put on weight, which probably makes us feel a little bit, you know, not as well as we might if we weren't in that state, and we might move less, which then causes longer term physical ailments. Yeah. It's very similar. If we don't do those things to look after ourselves mentally, you know, it has a consequence. So the guilt side of it is trying to turn that again from, you know, I feel guilty, I'm not contributing here, doing what someone in my life has, you know, sort of imparted on me that I should be doing, versus, well, what if I didn't do that? How unwell would I be if I didn't do that? Yeah. And then having that focus to go, whether it be, you know, a sporting type of thing for some people, you know, for a lot of, you know, older people, that's, you know, had an interest in mechanics and those types of things, get a motorbike and go for, heard heaps of people say, you know, Saturday morning is my 3-hour ride on the bike. I can be uptight, stressed, annoying the hell out of everyone around me. I come back from that 3-hour bike ride, different person. And again, it's that whatever the thing is that resets the person, that action of going out, seeing things, alone time, thinking through things, just resets that person and, you know, provides some of that, you know, positive endorphins and those types of things for the person. And again, it doesn't have to be an achievable activity, a sport or something like that. You know, some people it's, just go and sit and watch the waves for 2 hours and go, that's my thing. That resets me, that makes me, levels me out, brings me back to being a happier person mentally, and then I'm ready to go again. Yep. Yeah.
One of the buzzwords I see a lot in this space is mindfulness.
Yeah.
And like I do a lot of work with chronic pain.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the things that helps is mindfulness. Yeah. And I heard someone talk about sport and how one of the reasons it's so great for us is because it's literally like 2 hours where we can't think about life. Yep. All we can focus about is what's in front of us, which in my mind is, you know, mindfulness. Yeah. And you talk about, you know, getting on the motorbike. You can't think about, you know, the stuff that's going on. Yeah. You got to focus on not crashing or, you know, what's in front of you.
Yeah. Brain doesn't let you do it.
No.
Won't let you do the two things at once. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just interesting thinking about that and the relation, because I know a lot of people would think about mindfulness and go, well, I can't sit at home and meditate. Yeah. Or, you know, I can't just sit at home and be mindful. But that's where you can do it unintentionally by choosing an activity or something to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I have so many interesting, funny conversations around mindfulness where people go, but I can't lie in bed and try and relax. My mind keeps racing. And I'm like, well, that might be more of a relaxation training that you're trying to do. It's like, get a mindfulness app on your phone and you can choose things. It will be, and I say it in the course sometimes to say, okay, what I want you to do right now is everyone close your eyes. What I need you to concentrate on is the first sound that you hear when I stop talking. And that might be the wind in the trees outside that we just heard. And then I say, okay, keep that in your mind. Think about that noise and concentrate on that. And then tell me the second noise that you hear in the room. Might be a car going past, a bird or something like that. And then explaining that to go, that's what mindfulness is. You're concentrating on something, which means you can't run the list of things through your mind. Yep. You can't run those thoughts through your mind and through your head whilst you're doing that at the same time. Yep. Yeah. So again, it's that an explanation of that to sort of go, and activities do that for us as well. We got bees at the start of last year, in February last year, and for their health and upkeep and well-being, we do regular inspections of those types of things. There's times I can go out and I think we'll go somewhere and do an inspection, and I'm like, that probably took me about half an hour to get through that. Look down at my watch, it's an hour and 45 minutes later. Just because you pull a frame out and look at every little cell in the frame, you're looking at bees, you're doing the highlight. There's no way you can think about anything else while you're doing that.
Yeah.
Particularly if you've got those stresses and things running through your mind, that takes over what you're doing, or what you're doing takes over that.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It could be so beneficial and so helpful. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
On a different kind of topic, but
Yes.
similar in some regards, social media,
Yes.
massive issue at the moment. Like even talking about the mindfulness, like I know a lot of people will, doom scroll or spend these hours and hours on the phone, which in my mind isn't mindfulness, even though it is an activity, because it's, it's stimulating and as the big one, I suppose. What are your thoughts on the correlation between social media and our phones and mental health?
Yeah, I think it's a big issue, particularly for our young people. So as well as doing the mental health first aid stuff, I do facilitation with Dolly's Dream, which is an Australian charity that looks at, anti-bullying in schools and social media, keeping safe on social media and doing those types of things. And I was at a school earlier this week in Foster in New South Wales, and we do a parent session in that as well, and sort of saying, what age do you think most of our kids, getting a phone and having a phone? And, they sort of go, probably going into high school, we'd probably give them a phone and things. And when we do the session with the kids, from about grade 3 onwards, at least half the class has a phone.
Right.
Or that kids will indicate they have a phone. And for some of them, it will be, I can't do anything on it other than my parents will text me to say, can you let me know when you're on a bus? Because they get a bus home from school in grade 3 or grade 4.
Yeah.
But the horror on parents' faces to go, what? Like how? And, most of the kids from grade 3 or 4 or 5 onwards are using messenger kids to message each other.
Yeah.
So there's already that attachment to, there's that thing on my phone that I have to be doing and messaging back my friends because everyone else is messaging everyone else. So if I don't do it, I miss out.
Yeah.
And then some of that plays into sort of social exclusion for our kids to go, oh, well, we organised this last night on the phone, but you don't have one, so you miss out. And that's happening younger and younger. And we know that the information that's available to people that might have been available to us at 15, 16 or 17 that we might have had to ask a few people about is now online for kids to see at 11 and 12. Their brains aren't as developed as what ours were at 15 and 16. So again, that added pressure of that, you'll see it, from you go to a cafe and, I always point out when we're at a cafe and say, have a look at those two people over there and see how long they sit with each other on each other's phones. And, in a time where we want to connect and do those important things and, two people sitting at a table looking at their phone for like 8 minutes straight or something is like, I don't know why people go out and have coffee and a nice breakfast when they do that. Sit at home on the back deck and just go, I'll see you in 8 minutes because you're on your phone and doing stuff. And we know it's valuable for organising things and getting information and doing stuff. But, are those key times where there's, connection required. And we always say to the young kids, don't take it to bed with you before you go to sleep because your brain engages in a different way, which means you don't go to sleep, which means you're tired at school the next day, which means you're on edge, which means you carry that through to the next day, you become unwell. And, particularly at dinner time around the table and, go, that might be the only time of the day your parents have to say, how was your day today? What did you do? This is what my day was like. And this is what we're doing next weekend. As opposed to people on the phone, and we just sort of get used to doing that.
Yeah.
So those influences and what we try and compete with and keep up with is where it really has that detrimental effect of, well, I've seen this person who's probably paid to put a post up like that is doing that. Well, my life should be a bit like that.
Yeah.
That's where I've got to lead my life because that person's similar to me at a similar age, and this is what they've got.
Yeah.
But against being happy in your own lot and being comfortable and happy with whatever you're doing is the most important thing, not what everyone else is doing. Yeah.
And I feel like as parents, we're at the highest risk of those challenging kind of emotions or getting sucked into social media when we're going through this identity change. You get some young kids and all of a sudden you see everybody traveling, and then you know, because you're seeing them on social media, so then that's when you're wanting to be doing it.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between men and women in terms of this side of thing, like going back to like the purpose, or just while we're on this topic, is it a difference between genders? Because, you know, I imagine having a purpose is important for everybody, and looking out for your mental health is good for everybody. Like, you know, we always hear about the mental health issues in men. Is it there for women? What's the...
So certainly statistically, you know, statistics across anxiety, depression, those mood disorders, you know, is statistically represented higher in females. So we know for females it is, being female is an increased risk of developing a mental illness, and that generally comes back to being more in touch with feelings and emotions, more emotional people than what males are. So for what you might not have as such a big hit for you when someone says something, females are more likely to have a stronger response to that. But that then also means that they're more comfortable to talk to their friends about it and go and seek help. So the stats represent that. Whereas for blokes, it's like, you know, whatever stereotype you grew up with, harden up, you know, boys don't cry, and we don't talk about and share our problems because we're the breadwinner and we've got to look like we've got, you know, everything together. And then in those same stats, we see then that, you know, substance use disorder is flipped on its head, and it's double in males than it is in females. So we go with that correlation of lower reported statistics for depression, anxiety, but twice as much as females for substance use disorder. Sort of leads us down that path of the old, come around, we'll have a few beers, and make you feel better, becomes a coping mechanism. You know, if things get tough, we go out, have plenty of beers, we feel better. For a little bit of time, we still wake up feeling like crap the next day, and the problems are still there. So so the stresses then, you know, certainly on females for, you know, careers, childbirth, raising families, those types of things adds to those statistics as well and makes them a little bit higher. But generally most of our statistics are reported that way. But then, you know, again, you know, we look at, you know, deaths by suicide in our country, and it's still 75.6% are males. So close to 9 people who take their life every day in Australia, 6.5 statistically of those are males. So again, that's, you know, so all of our reported stats are lower for males, yet all the really serious things that happen are higher for males. So I think that's the main driver behind all those campaigns to go, hey, we probably want to get our stats closer to where the female stats are, but that takes us talking to each other to go, hey, mate, when I ask you, is everything okay? Because I've noticed that you're looking a heap more tired. You haven't come to golf for the last 3 weeks when you normally do, and I can see you put a bit of weight on. I reckon that means something's going on. Let's have a chat about it. As opposed to, mate, are you all good, bud? And, you know, the traditional is, no, I'll be right. She'll be right. I'll get through it. And we know, you know, particularly putting some of those factors to the person to say, hey, I've noticed X, Y, Z over a period of time, sort of from a male pride thing, makes you go, gee, someone around me can notice this. I've either got to fix it, or if it's really bad, someone's reached out and hopefully I can talk to you about it because it's pretty bad. And again, that's probably where most of those campaigns come from for that purpose.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of the things I'm seeing a lot of younger blokes doing now is playing golf. Like traditionally, it's like old man sport. And I just wonder, like I guess if you replace golf with maybe the generation before, it's going to the pub and having a beer, which is quite an intimate thing to look at someone across the table and have an intimate conversation. It's more just chatting sport in general. Chat. You don't feel comfortable. Whereas golf, maybe you're walking next to someone, you're not you don't have to have the full conversation now. You have a couple of sentences, hit your shot, and then you chat, and you can. It gives you the chance to change the direction of the conversation if you're uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're stuck with someone for 4 hours and you can't go anywhere, good opportunity to go, well, maybe I might open up about it and talk about it. But there is some really interesting, you know, data around, you know, where most of those meaningful conversations between men happen. And generally it's that side by side, not you know, could probably not imagine going to a cafe, sitting across from one of your best mates, gazing deep into their eyes and saying, hey, I've noticed these things. Is everything going okay? But again, driving the golf buggy and go, mate, I reckon you've had a couple of changes and I don't know if everything's going okay for you. Like, what's going on, man?
Yeah.
You're not looking at each other. The person can look out the other side if they want to start saying something, if they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a really good time for that as well. Yeah.
It's so interesting seeing these different activities as well that, you know, let's just say blokes enjoy, but you may not be able to articulate exactly why that is. Or
Yeah.
like if I go and play golf, I come home and I feel amazing. And it's like, oh, maybe because I've just been outdoors or because I've been walking or exercising. It's like, which probably does help.
Yeah. All of them added up. Yeah.
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 And I'll go to someone's house, let's say like my partner's friends, and she'll be like, golf, it's so boring. Like, why do you do this? And it's just, you know, a social thing. Yeah. But then like just talking about it now, I'm like, oh, it makes sense.
Yep. And ultimately, as much as we might have, you know, introverts, extroverts, we are all, as the human beings and animals that we are, we're all social by nature. So some level of interaction is important. And there's even, you know, in that same study with the men's loneliness stuff about saying, you know, the difference between a group that gets together and talks about things, maybe at a community barbecue, versus some of the online communities, people getting much greater results from having that human connection.
Yeah.
So it's exactly all of those things. And when you look through the list of, you know, other supports you can provide for someone who might be, you know, developing a mental illness, it's all about get some sunlight, get some exercise, get some interaction, do something that has a purpose or that has like an achievable thing at the end of it. And we sort of think sometimes where we say, you know, put some level of achievement to it for the person, because once they complete that dopamine hit, positive chemicals into the brain, and that doesn't have to be go and train and win a game of footy, because that's really unattainable for some people. It might be, let's go out now, let's go for a 15-minute walk. Once you see 15 minutes on your watch, you've achieved something, and that gives you that dopamine hit. So again, if we can attach that sort of thing to it. So for some people, that's let's go have a round of golf. We got to 18. We do the big handshake at the end and go, that was pretty awesome. We've just gone and achieved something, and we've exercised, we've spoken, we've connected, and we've gotten some sunlight.
Yeah.
So also all such valuable things. Same with cricket, you know. People go, how could you stand in the sun for 7 hours? And people used to say that to me. I used to love a day of cricket when, you know, if it was at South or wherever it was, if it was 42 degrees and we fielded for 7 hours, I absolutely loved it. What a challenge it was. You need everyone around you to hang in and stick at it. You need to make sure you're looking after yourself physically by having enough fluid. It was like, here's all these challenges. And people were like, I was at the beach and I was in the water and I was still sweating. Like, I don't know how you stood out there for 7 hours. And I was like, it's the greatest day I've had in months. Just because that challenge that's attached to it.
Doing hard shit.
Yeah. And again, people are like, cricket, man, if you go out, get 5 and then you're out the rest of the day and you sit for the next 7 hours and then next week you stand in the sun for 7 hours, it's like, how's that enjoyable? And it's like, well, it gives you that motivation to go, I don't want to sit here for 6 hours next week, so I might need to be a little bit better when I go and bat next week and have that challenge in the field then. So
I look back at cricket and you talk to people that don't play and it's like, oh, I probably don't even love cricket that much either.
Yeah.
I like some of the things that come from it. I'm very grateful for the life skills I've got from cricket because you don't win that much as an individual. Like you might win as a team, but if your team wins and you nick off for a duck, you field all day and you know, you're not really that pleased. Like your team's won, but you feel like you know, it's like any kind of activity. If you're not pulling your weight, you don't feel like you've contributed. It's a bit of a hollow win, I suppose. And life's a bit like that.
Absolutely. And again, it's just, you know, trying to pick those positive things out of it. And, you know, the team environment thing and winning might be, that's the thing that gets you over the line at the end of the day when you're sitting around with everyone and go, geez, I had a stinker, but, you know, we got to win. That's good. You know, a couple of blokes did really well. So let's be happy for them. And
That's right. That's right.
And sort of go with that.
One of the things I've heard is about the relationship between self-esteem and like doing things you say you're going to do. So it's like kind of what you're talking before. If you say we're going to go for a 15-minute walk and then you achieve it, it's like that dopamine hit. Yeah. Like how important it is, like if you do say you're going to do something, following up on that and not just, you know, not being the type of person who says, oh yeah, I'll do this tomorrow. Yeah. And then tomorrow rolls around and you don't do it. Or perhaps what I'm trying to get at is if you are doing that, the negative spiral it can create. Yeah. So maybe like a decent actionable step is like, don't just say you're going to do anything willy-nilly. Yeah. Really be thoughtful about what you say to yourself you're going to do so that when you do say that, you follow up. Yeah. And then you do it. And then that's just like you get a step forward.
Yeah.
And then you do it again, you get a step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where when we're encouraging people that might be becoming unwell, it's not like, we need to go see a GP, we'll chat with a counsellor, we'll take you out for, 40 minutes walking every day, we'll get you back down into the hobby that you wanted to do. For the person who's unwell, that's way too much. And certainly in the mental health space, realistic thinking is something that, is really important and becoming more evident. And again, it can come to those realistic goals of going, okay, don't overdo it and say you're going to do all these things. Today it might be that, you walk out to the letterbox twice and come back inside. You achieve those two things, you've achieved something. There's some really good, I can't remember who did it. There's a speech or presentation, I think it was an army guy in the States, an army general or something. And anyway, he said, best thing you can do at the start of every day is get up and make your bed.
Yeah.
Try and encourage your kids to do that. You have achieved something in the first 7 seconds of when you wake up. That starts the one step of you've achieved something. You actually get a dopamine hit. It might not seem like anything, but when you turn back and when kids look back and go, my bed's made, you've actually achieved something. The goal was to make your bed. You've done it, tick, you've done something positive to start your day. Yep. And it's all those things of, and that's where we, sort of encourage that to, not necessarily bombard people with, here's the list of all the things that might be helpful for you. Okay, if you're really unwell and you're finding it, hard to do particular things, just pick one of those and let's achieve that to start with.
Yeah.
Great. You do that one day. Maybe we move that to 2 things that you do next week. But again, it is when we have those unrealistic goals, unrealistic expectations, and we don't meet them, we don't get the dopamine hit.
Yeah.
If anything, we then start to self-judge and go, why was it that I couldn't do that? Was it because of my capabilities? Hang on, we're all of a sudden starting to go like this already, as opposed to maybe if I had said I could do 2 things, we're going on that trajectory. Yeah. Yeah. So definitely can be, something that people, and people will be overzealous with what they feel they can achieve and get done and then end up disappointed. Yeah. As opposed to going, well, maybe we should have just put 4 of those 8 things on the list and achieve those. Going to give you a much better feeling and result.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I also listen to a lot of podcasts, but I listened to this bloke who was talking about how he had something that he needed to do that was impossible to do. And he had 2 days and he's like, I'm just no chance of doing it. And he's like, someone asked him and he's like, nah, I can't do that. Yeah. And then he stopped for a second and he's like, but if I was to do it, how would I do it? Yeah. So he didn't think about whether or not he could do it. Yeah. He just thought, if it was to happen, how would he do it? And it just completely changed his mindset. Yeah. So he worked out how it would happen. He looked at that and went, oh, actually, I probably can do that. Yeah. And I was like, that's such an interesting perspective to look at things. And you
might mean up a little bit later for that one particular time, but it's achievable.
That's right. Yeah. And then you work out whether you want to do it or not. Yeah. You might still look at that and go, it actually is doable. I could do it, but I'm not willing to do that. Yeah. But then that's a completely different thing. You're not saying that you're unable to do something, judging your self-worth, or you've made a fairly logical decision based on the facts in front of you.
Interesting you say impossible. I use that for, I coach my partner's master's women's team up at Mount Gravatt, and I regularly put that out as one of our things where people say, this is impossible. And I say, what if you change that same word to I'm possible?
Oh, yeah.
Same letters.
Yeah.
Impossible means I'm possible.
Yeah.
And if you think I'm possible, and we do that, started preseason training last year, ladies who'd never played AFL before going, there's no way I'm going to be able to kick a ball more than about 10 metres in front of me. And so that's impossible. And I say, well, what if I'm possible?
Yeah.
What if you possibly could do it? And what if we, again, break it down into the small steps of doing it and coaching my son's under 13s team too. No disrespect to the ladies or the kids. I find the groups really similar to coach and train based on their experience, and where they're at is fairly similar. And, so I find to do some drills across both of those. And one of the simplest ones with kicking is just standing on your left foot, your right leg bent, you just drop the ball from there and swing your leg through.
Yeah.
Once people start doing that and they go, oh, is that where the ball's supposed to hit on my foot? Yeah. Oh, that's the way it actually spins, like when I watch it on TV, and it's like, yep.
I could have done with a bit of that feedback when you were coaching.
So we don't practice learning a skill. Like when we start riding a bike, we don't get on a mountain bike and go down a big, massive thing. We start on a little bike. It's got training wheels. We advance. We progress all the way through. It's the same with some of those skills where they go, I don't think I'll be able to play a game because I can't kick. And I know we've got to kick to our teammates for it to be enjoyable. It's like, that is possible.
Yeah.
Totally possible. So,
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
I'd like to talk about kids and how we can, do actionable things to help the mental health in our kids.
Yeah.
And I think what you were discussing then, how kids learn lots of skills and they are incredible at, it's just the way the brain and neuroplasticity is in some regards, that they're predisposed at that age to be able to pick up skills really quickly.
Yeah.
But is that step one of trying to develop mental health, is having the conversations like, hey, look what you just did, look what you've achieved, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And what is the process? What other things are there that we can do to help manifest, good self-esteem and mental health in our kids?
Yeah, definitely. It's really interesting what, kids will pick up. And, I feel that, people like yourself that have got kids at your age now, that hopefully some of those stresses and social media stuff might change by the time they grow up.
Yeah.
In the Dolly's Dream sessions, I always use the analogy with parents of, we let the horse bolt out of the gate and we're now throwing the saddle to try and catch it from a long way away. And that horse is going quicker and we can't run as fast as the horse is going. So hopefully, with these potential new regulations of apps at 16 years of age, those types of things might be beneficial.
Yeah.
But you'd be amazed at what people pick up. I did a mental health first aid online session last week and my son was home sick at school. So he pretty much heard the 4.5 hours of my content and I talk to him regularly about that, and he's 11. So he's got a reasonable understanding of it now. But again, I always say to people, I'm so lucky that I work in this space that they hear enough about it and I know how important those conversations are. So for me, it's that encouragement about, thoughts and feelings, to not be afraid to talk about them, and that someone's not going to stand there always and try and problem solve that for you, or tell you what you have to do or what you've done right or what you've done wrong, which is what I think sometimes, kids going through that and growing up, might feel, well, I'm not going to say what happened at school today, because you just sit there and say, well, this is what you need to go and do from this point forward and what happens from here, as opposed to, okay, I can see that something's up. Tell me about it. What's happened? Be comfortable to tell me about it. Tell me what's going on. So I think that conversation is really important. And for me, it's it's role modeling as well. What we do, how we talk, how we are with people. We always say that in our parent sessions for Dolly's Dream is like, you've just got to be mindful of, if you're at home talking about someone or saying something about someone and you choose to say something unkind, our kids hear it. They go, I'll role model that person does. So when I see something in someone that I don't like, that means I can say something unkind to them.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter how many times you tell the kid, oh, you shouldn't say that, if they see you doing it.
Absolutely. Same with our phones. It's like, nothing more hypocritical than going, we don't have phones at the table at night, and then having it sit there and go, oh yeah, but I'm really waiting for this important work text to come through or phone call.
Yep.
It's like, okay, then we're saying that what we think our important thing isn't as important for our kids. Their friend getting back to them right now while we're sitting here is as important as your work call that's got to come through. But we say that's okay for us, but that's no good for you. You can't do that. So it's that role modeling as well, to go, we're all in this together and all doing that.
Yeah.
Which can be really helpful. And I don't like to often talk about it, but even going out and visiting so many schools, and any of the times I feel I've got, a really rowdy class, or, some of the kids in a class might misbehave, you can really see it role modeled through the teachers they have in that particular group, how encouraging they are of them, or do they just talk down to them and yell at them and carry on? And teachers do a bloody amazing job at what they do, and it's hard work, and it's getting more and more difficult for them through conversations. But for ones who will be really nice and considerate of people, generally the kids seem to be as well.
Yeah.
And that can be whole schools you go to. You go to some schools and do, prep through to grade 6 across 2 days, and it's like, you get to the end of it, you need a big lie down, and others you actually just want to hang around afterwards because all their kids are so nice and generous and happy to talk about it and engaging.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of that's role modeling. Yeah. The conversation for me is so important, and particularly now that, our kids are finding out so much more, I don't even know if I can recall if my parents had the birds and bees chat with me particularly, but
Yes.
I don't think it would have been before 15 or 16 maybe, but
Yeah.
you know, kids see all that and exposed to that now at 11 and 12 years of age.
Yeah.
When they talk about it at school, it's getting earlier and earlier.
Yeah.
You know, grade 7's doing, you know, respectful relationship presentations and that, and this is how we actually treat the women in our lives and these types of things. I think back to grade 7 and I was like, I wore my school uniform to bed the night before so I could get up the earliest, because when you went to my primary school, when you got to the school grounds was the batting order before school. So if you were the second there, you got to open. If you were the ninth person there, you might not get a bat that morning when we played cricket in the schoolyard because 7 people might not get out.
Yeah.
That was all I was
Priorities.
worried about, not about those
Yeah.
types of things, but
No.
it's just moving to so much earlier and earlier. And that's the greatest challenge for parents with, you know, kids at that who will come into those sessions and go, I'm so far out of what I need to know and where I am. Like, how do you get back there? How do you catch up? And it's just a matter of, it's education again with anything. It's, you know, here's some really good resources that we have. Please take the time to look it up instead of the, you know, 35-minute scroll through TikTok is the last thing you might do. Jump onto the Beacon app and have a look through and go, what does this all mean? What does this all look like? And just get educated, because, you know, if you have that conversation and say what actually went on and someone says, you know, this person was doing this and sort of made me feel a little bit funny, then if you've got some background information on what that means and how that could play out, then you can advance that conversation as well. Yeah.
It was interesting. I am quite interested in like skill acquisition and development, and you know, it kind of feeds into, you know, having an open conversation where you're asking questions instead of like telling someone what to do, whether it's kids or humans. I was at the cricket nets yesterday or the day before, and there's a dad there, and like the kid was bowling at him, and the kid would bowl the ball, and then he come in and he's like, do this. Every ball, it was like something different. And you're like, the kid's got so much information. That's not going to help him improve. And that's just something that I see and that I've kind of learnt. But it's interesting. You see so many kids don't take advice from their dads in the sporting context. Like you go and the dad will be like to me, he'd be like, oh, can you like coach my son? He's at the age where he just won't listen to me anymore. And now just talking about this, I wonder if it's just like, because you're not listening to him, you're just trying to tell him what to do from your knowledge. And it comes back to all aspects, where if you're telling a kid, you know, you shouldn't be on your phone when we're having dinner, but you're on your phone. It's all just related.
Definitely.
And I almost think like, you almost, like if I was the kid, I'd probably lose a bit of respect. Because it's like, well, you're not true to your word. Like I can't trust you. I can't respect you. If I'm trying to think of it from a kid's perspective, that's where I'd be going.
I find that with coaching the kids too, of that, you know, you definitely, and it can be in our mental health conversation sometimes, just to go straight into problem solving mode and go, okay, well, if you've got all those things going on, do X, Y, Z, that'll get you better. Which is what the person doesn't need, because they can't logically go, well, I don't know how to do X, Y, Z. That's what I'm asking for help for. And definitely, you know, we'll come in from drills where I know the kids are stuffed it royally and they normally do it really well, but I don't come in and say, righto guys, this is really crap and we need to go out and do it better. They just come in, I say, what do you reckon if I asked you a score out of 10? How would you rate how well you did that? And some will go, 6, and some go, nah, it's a 3. And I'm like, I'd probably go more with that, I reckon. I reckon you're probably a bit closer to where I reckon it was at. What do we do better, do you think, to fix that up? And again, hearing from their own peers to go, this is what we need to do, and particularly a couple of kids that, you know, are really good natural sort of leaders that, you know, instead of me saying, like you say, going, all right, X, Y, Z is what we need to do better in this particular drill. Now go out and do it, make sure you do it. If they hear it from the group and they go, okay, well, when he's kicking the ball to me, I remember that he said, I've got to do this better, so I'll probably do it better. Yeah.
But then it's also like that self-esteem and confidence, which, you know, I think in the mental health, it's all related because you've not told them what to do. And that's the solution. They've worked it out. They've solved the problem. They've seen the success. So then they're like, oh, okay, next time this happens, I can problem solve. I can work through it. And we talk in a sporting analogy, but I feel like it's in all different aspects. Whether it's a difficult relationship or situation at school that's happened.
And guiding them to get to where they want to go to. And always, yeah, again, it sounds, wishy-washy, cliche, but I always, we got 2 under 13 sides, and I always say to the parents, my focus isn't on winning games and playing finals, but I know that if I spend my focus on improving their ability to, contest the ball, improving their skills, improving their gameplay, that they'll win some games, and I think the result will be we'll win games and play finals.
Yeah.
But that's not my focus. So if you want to come in and go, I want our kids to come to footy and win games of footy, I said we might not for a while. We might not the whole season if they don't get those elements of what they need to do to improve.
Yeah.
And certainly say that to them every training session. I say, I can't run out in the field, move your legs so that you kick the ball properly. That's on you, not on me. I'll show you at training 400 times how you do that. Yeah. But again, it's on you. If you choose to go out and do that well, that works. You win some games, you play some finals, and that's a bit more enjoyable than losing by 40 points every week.
Yeah.
So again, it's that focus of trying to get the support mechanism in place so that the person gets to where they want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like relating that back to, from a sporting analogy just to everyday life, it's going, let's say you've got a 12-year-old, it's going, I don't expect that you're going to problem solve and be able to work through this issue on your own immediately. Yeah. I will help you. And if you need support or guidance, but you've got to work it out. So then when that problem happens again, then maybe at 18, you'll be really good at all this.
Yeah.
And then
it's that prompting process to go, what do you think that's going to look like? What do you reckon the solution might be? And we can then give our input to say, I reckon that's probably going to be a good way to do it. Any other ways you might think about doing it? Yeah.
And I feel like, the dinner table conversations, we talk about, not being on phones, but sometimes it's like, well, I don't have anything to talk about. Yeah. But having like some like little prompts or things you talk about, every day, or checking in some of these questions, just prompting a bit of thought instead of it being like you're just sitting there and you're like, how was your day?
Well, the old closed questions, particularly now mine are 14 and 12, and it's like, man, pulling teeth. What'd you get up to today? How's your day been? Good.
Yeah.
That's a response. Like, okay, what specifically did you do today? Can you please list for me a few things you've done during the day?
Yeah. And then the frustration
such a
builds.
big difference. I know. Well, it's trying. You got to pull yourself out of that to go, and again, it's that pressure of, I don't have a phone anywhere near 12 years of age. So now there's an adult and a parent asking a 12-year-old in their brain what they did during the day on a phone and responding. Like for us, it was, when our parents got home at 5, 6 or 7 o'clock that we, had that discussion, and there was probably more discussion because it was in person and kept until a time. Now it's because it's so bang, 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 bang with all the communication. That's what they get used to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of, teachers are grade, preps grade 1s and 2s that now indicating at some of those schools that kids have never written anything in their life coming into kindy.
Yep.
So then they go, let's do our alphabet and start writing. And they're like, pencil, but give them an iPad and they can go do.
Yeah.
And the changes that then makes for things, and different world.
Yeah. Might just look to leave it there.
Yes, cool.
I feel
Thank
like
you.
we've covered a lot of different topics.
Heaps. Yeah.
Is there any kind of final thoughts? The biggest takeaway I've got is being, around the mental health sphere is the awareness, the understanding, educate yourself so that if you're in a situation, you've got the tools to be able to assist either yourself or others. Yeah. But then also the importance of like role modeling good behaviors and not trying to be, someone who is pushing yourself to impart your wisdom or information.
All of those. And I think we just, have that confidence to have the conversation, or more so in the back of our mind, again, know that we can help some people out, and we can help people out earlier than what we probably think we can, particularly for males amongst us, we know that, but, we want to have some of those serious conversations sometimes instead of when someone's really bad or unwell to, as we see it sort of happening or building, just having the check-in to go, mate, you haven't messaged back in our group for a while. Is everything going okay? Has something come up or is something going on? Yeah. Like, and we generally sort of are a bit, do we or don't we? Generationally, that might be changing, but having that confidence, I think, to talk about it and have the conversation and know that we can support people around us, I think is really important. But again, that awareness of, make sure we know what's going on, we know how to respond, know how to help someone out. my final physical analogy. Like, someone came into work with a badly broken arm, both bones out of place. We wouldn't leave it 3 weeks or 6 weeks if they kept coming in and go, oh, hang on, I've actually noticed that is really bad now.
Yeah.
And it's been really bad for 2 months. Do you reckon you might go get it checked out? No way. Person came in and they were really, really unwell or unhealthy. We'd be like, geez, what's going on? Have you gotten that checked out?
Yeah.
But again, for the people who, don't engage in those activities, look really tired, start isolating or withdrawing from particular things, we go, oh, maybe they're just having a bit of a bad patch. I'll check in 2 months' time. And we know when we say we'll check in 4 weeks, that it goes in what feels like 3 days, and then it's 6 months later, and we go, "Geez, have I not messaged you to see how you're going in 6 months?" And it's like I thought when I'm back then, I thought it was going to be 2 or 4 weeks that I was going to check in, and we don't.
Yes.
So, so that awareness, confidence to help out. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks very much. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so Informed Mental Health is our organisation. So delivering mental health first aid is our main course that we go through, but do have some courses available, shorter courses, half days, sort of 2-hour awareness courses around mental health. And we do a community sporting program as well. So, going out to senior sporting clubs, talking about, all things mental health, but giving some practical tools, particularly for younger males, to sort of be, hey, we know this thing exists and we may not be so sure at 17, 18, 19, 20, how we unpack that conversation, but here's some really cool tools if you need to. We know not every side that plays sport are the high flyers winning everything. Times get really tough, particularly, if you're down the bottom of the table and people get annoyed at each other and we're not winning and we're not doing this, then, look after each other in that and know how to do that. Yeah, so a few avenues, but Informed Mental Health, you'll find us there. So
we'll chuck the links in the show notes.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, thanks very much. Really appreciate it.
Really appreciate you having me on. Every bit of awareness, and I'm really glad you got a good interest in this, and always good to talk about. So
absolutely,
cheers, mate.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.